The community has chosen to add a strange mammal that curls up into a ball to protect itself, the armadillo, to the next version of Minecraft. It's a controversial choice picked from among 3 rather popular mobs, so much so that many people complain that not all of them were added right away. But having a choice among such interesting mobs hasn't always been the case. That's what we're gonna look at today by retracing the history of an event eagerly awaited every year by the Minecraft community, the mob vote. But before I tell you its story, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever wanted to create a Minecraft server and invite all your friends to it? Well, that's possible with the sponsor of this video, Sniffer, a hosting provider with insane performance that's incredibly easy to use. Build, automate, and explore as much as you want without ever experiencing any lag. Use our link in the description and you'll get 10% off all plans with the code EASEISEEKCraft. It all starts here with the announcement of Minecon Earth 2017. Mojang reveals the aquatic update for Minecraft, which finally adds a real immersive experience to its oceans, but that's not all. Players will have the chance to vote for one of these 4 mobs on Twitter. The Great Hunger, a big lizard that camouflages itself in the ground and has the ability to devour players' enchantments. The Barnacle, a sea monster that creates whirlpools and drags players to the bottom of the oceans. The Wildfire, an overpowered blaze that can defend itself against your attacks while dealing heavy damage to you. And finally, the one the community chose to vote for, the Phantom. So yes, one of the most hated mobs in the game today by the community was actually introduced by the community. The Phantom is so annoying for the gameplay experience, and its loot is so useless that its spawning has even been disabled on major servers on Wii. But then, why was this choice made? This is where one of the major problems with mob votes comes in, the lack of information. Indeed, Mojang has gotten into the bad habit of giving as little concrete detail as possible about what the mob will actually do in the game if it's added. This leaves so much room for interpretation and speculation by the players that the actual result is often far below their expectations. Still, some good news does come out of all this. Even if many mobs aren't added to the game, some mechanical ideas are later implemented in one way or another. The whirlpools in the Barnacle's water would eventually be represented by underwater magma blocks, and the Great Hunger's ability to devour enchantments by the addition of the grindstone.
The following year, the mob vote changed to become the Biome vote. This time, players were given the responsibility to choose between 3 already existing biomes.
The one they wanted to update to improve and develop further. So, during Minecon Earth 2018, the community had the choice between the desert biome, which would include a meerkat and palm trees, the savanna biome with the addition of termites, ostriches, and baobabs, and the one that ultimately won over the cubic hearts of the people, the taiga biome with its fox, berries, and campfire. But in this battle we faced 2 problems. First, there was clearly favoritism from Mojang for the savanna and taiga, which simply got one more addition than the desert biome. If this biome had been greatly appreciated by the community, it might have stood a chance. But here, it's just a huge imbalance that immediately takes it out of the equation. And anyway, how can you compete against that little fox? But what really upsets the community is the fact that Mojang comes up with great ideas but only ends up implementing a third of them. All the proposed biomes clearly deserve to be updated, and they're not the only ones. Many biomes have been neglected for far too long, even though they barely have any unique features.
To give you a scary statistic, the end dimension hasn't been updated since 2016. It's the most anticipated overhaul by the community, and with every new announcement, the wait just gets longer. In 7 years, there hasn't been anything new for this dimension. No interesting new blocks or items, no new mobs, and most importantly, no new biomes.
It remains empty, even though it's one of the areas with the most potential in the game.
To try to make up for these past mistakes, Mojang organized another biome vote in 2019, but this one was a bit different. Once again, the community had the chance to choose between 3 biomes, but this time they were only voting for the order in which they would appear. And yes, you got it. All 3 biomes were destined to be updated. It might seem trivial at first glance, but it's actually very important for players. In fact, several years can go by before their favorite biome gets updated. And here we come to another major problem. Mojang has a lot of ambition, but ends up being too slow compared to the players' expectations. We'll come back to that in a moment. That year, the mountain biome won the vote with its promise of brand new terrain generation, as well as the addition of the goat and powder snow.
But it would then take the studio more than 2 years to properly implement it into the game, becoming the Cave and Cliff update in 2021.
As for the biome that came in second place, it's the swamp, and it would be implemented in 2022 in the wild update with the arrival of frogs, mud, and mangroves. As for the last biome on the list of reworks, it's the Badlands, and its turn hasn't come yet. But maybe it will be announced this year for 1.21. Noticing the delay in their promised update, and partly because of the health crisis at that time, Mojang then decided to go back to the mob vote, which is still used today. The basic format is the same as in 2017, but this time there are only 3 mobs instead of 4. So in 2020, it's war again. Players have the choice between the Moobloom, a cow that interacts with bees, the Ice Lodger, an ice wizard with a brand new attack mechanic, and the Glow Squid, a squid that glows in the ocean depths. The votes were heavily influenced by the YouTuber Dream, who asked his community to vote for the squid. The latter won against the Iceologer by a narrow margin and was added in version 1.17 of the game. Although the mob itself is quite forgettable for players, the glowing sacks it drops upon death are still widely used and appreciated by the community today.
This is why this mob is considered the greatest success of the mob votes, if not the only one. We arrive in 2021, and that year, we got the worst mob ever introduced. Here is the glare.
In addition to having a name and appearance that don't work in its favor, this little ghost has the most useless feature ever introduced so far. It allows you to detect dark areas where mobs can spawn. But unfortunately for it, players prefer to use F3 a resource pack or simply place torches randomly. Never before had a mob received so few votes. It only gets 11% of the community's votes, which inevitably puts it in last place. So the 2021 vote really came down to the copper golem, which presses buttons around it, and the alley, a little blue fairy that can pick up items on the ground. The presentation of the copper golem was way too vague, and the alley looked way too cute, so the community chose to add a bit of magic to the game, and the alley was introduced. Now that players have had time to get to know the mob, the alley doesn't really serve much of a purpose. In any case, for the vast majority of players, it's either tied to a lead or locked in a room. Its reproduction system is very fun, and its animations too, but in terms of practicality, it doesn't really work in the long run. Its mechanic, which was supposed to help players gather resources, turns out to be more of a hassle than anything else. After all that, can Mojang do worse? And the answer is yes! We arrive in 2022 with a vote often described by the community as the worst of all. As usual, the hype builds up before the mob reveal, and then the community splits to defend their choice. Once again this year, a new golem is proposed, the tough golem. It's kind of like a living item frame which displays items and moves around a bit randomly. Then there's the rascal, a goblin who plays hide and seek in caves and gives you tools if you find him. But neither of these two mobs, although interesting, could stand up to the one described as the biggest disappointment in history, the Sniffer. A fascinating design, an impressive size, it hatches from an egg, it's a prehistoric mob, and on top of that, it's supposed to bring a real revolution to the botanical aspect of the game. How could you not vote for it? Unlike the other two mobs that didn't add anything concrete to the game, the Sniffer held a lot of promise for the impact it would have when it was added.
In addition to being the very first prehistoric mob, it would have the ability to sniff the ground to find seeds, and so it would add brand new flowers. And that's all it takes for the community to get excited.
Many people thought, and I was the first among them, that we were going to get lots of new flowers, some rarer than others, that they would have their own way of growing, being harvested, and would help develop this somewhat neglected aspect of the game, which is botany. Or even better, the Sniffer could have, in line with its prehistoric profile, allowed us to recover seeds from plants or trees from ancient times, and that would have been truly incredible. All that is very interesting, but what is it really like today? The Sniffer is indeed the first and only prehistoric mob in the game, but that doesn't change anything about it or what it brings. It's just some superfluous lore added by Mojang to smooth things over, but players aren't fooled. If 55% of the votes allowed the Sniffer to win, it's not by chance, but thanks to the flowers it promised to bring. Mojang insisted several times, even during the snapshots, that there would be multiple flowers with the addition of the Sniffer. Did they keep their promise? Yes, 2 flowers were added. That's literally the bare minimum to use the plural. But if that's all they chose to add, these 2 flowers must be incredible, right? No, not really. They're pretty, but they only give orange and cyan dye, things we could already get in the game in another way. Let me tell you, players were very disappointed with this addition, especially since, unlike the Biome vote where almost all are added, 2 mobs each year are left aside, even though some of them are implemented in other games of the franchise.
The mob vote is becoming less and less appreciated every year. Even if some mobs might seem a bit disappointing individually, it's always better to have 3 new ones in the game rather than just 1. In 2023, a revolutionary movement broke out with the hashtag #BoycottMobs vote, and a petition signed by more than 500,000 people demanded that this tradition stop and that all the mobs be added.
The vote for this year's mob still took place, and as we mentioned at the beginning, the armadillo won. The mob itself looks cool, but many people would have liked to have the mechanics of the penguin, and especially the crab in the game.
Indeed, the ability to place blocks farther away could have been a great help to builders.
The real problem with the mob vote today is that the suggested mobs are no longer just simple concepts or vague ideas like in the beginning. They are creatures with already chosen features with a whole lot of game design and planning behind them. Not implementing all this almost finished work is like shooting yourself in the foot.
The question we could legitimately ask is simply why Mojang is so slow. They take months, even years, to implement features that modders can add in a single evening.
That's what everyone thinks, and it's largely true, but the subject is more complex than it seems.
Modders work alone, while Mojang is a real team that has to coordinate and make decisions not only for the Java version, but also for the Bedrock version.
King Dogs, a developer at Mojang, claims that it's impossible for a single modder to recreate a game update in just 1 month. Obviously, once all the imagination and design work is done, like with the mob votes, it's easy for a talented modder to code a few lines to quickly add the crab or the penguin to the game. But if we think it's only the technical aspect that matters, we're ignoring all the issues of direction and business strategy that Mojang has to consider. In fact, the studios want to keep a vanilla game by avoiding changes that are too radical. You might wonder, hey, why don't they add a new dimension to the game? That would be so cool. But you can imagine that if adding a simple mob to the game takes months of discussion, then something as important as a new dimension would take several lifetimes. With this general dissatisfaction in the community, it's fair to wonder if the 2023 edition will be the last. Despite the boycott, this year's votes still reached a new record with over 5 million votes. On top of all that, in response to the players' anger, Mojang decided to simply give a unique and extremely stylish cape to everyone who took the time to vote. A choice that encourages players not to boycott Minecraft events anymore, but one that divides the community even more. The question then arises, should Mojang change its mob vote concept? Should they go back to only letting players choose the order in which mobs appear in the game?
Or should they simply stop and announce each year the new mobs being added without any vote at all? In any case, no matter your position on the subject, subscribe, turn on notifications for upcoming videos, and we look forward to your feedback in the comments.